Welcome to our latest news update. Today we will be discussing some of the most recent and important news stories from around the world. From political upsets to controversial decisions, we have it all covered. So without further ado, let's get started. In Finland, Sanna Marin has suffered a defeat in the recent election as the Social Democratic Party was beaten into third place. Meanwhile, in Paris, the city has voted to ban rental e-scooters, citing concerns over safety and the environment. In Ukraine, President Zelenskyy has issued a counteroffensive against Russian forces, giving them time to leave before threatening to destroy them. In Canada, an OPP officer has been found guilty of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman and filming it, sparking outrage and calls for justice. Finally, in Russia, the Ministry of Defense has warned that alcohol abuse, violence, and weapon incompetence are killing soldiers in the country. These are just a few of the many important news stories happening around the world. Stay tuned for more updates and analysis. Breaking news. Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin has lost her battle to stay in power after her center-left Social Democratic Party was narrowly beaten in third place in a cliffhanger election by its conservative and far-right rivals.
Well, that's a bummer for Sanna Marin. I hope she's not feeling too blue.
It's interesting to see the rise of far-right parties in Europe. It's a trend we've seen in recent years.
Yes, and it's particularly concerning in Finland, which shares a long border with Russia. It will be interesting to see how this election result affects their foreign policy.
I guess the Social Democratic Party didn't quite make the cut. Maybe they need a new campaign song.
It's important to remember that democracy is spoken, and the Finnish people have cast their vote. We must respect their decision and work towards a better future for all.
It's worth noting that the right-wing National Coalition Party won the election with 28% of the vote. It will be interesting to see what policies they implement.
And let's not forget about the populist Nation First Finns Party, who scored 20% of the vote. Looks like they're really finishing strong.
In this article from The Guardian, we can see that the next leader, Petteri Orpo, has promised to slash spending on unemployment and housing benefits. It will be important to monitor how these policies affect the Finnish people.
Well, it seems like Sanna Marin isn't the only one suffering a defeat. Paris has decided to ban rental scooters, leaving tourists with no choice but to walk or take a Segway tour.
Breaking news. Paris has voted to ban rental e-scooters. In this article from Cope states that the three main operators, Lime, Dot, and Tire, use social media to urge people to vote in their favor. They even offer free ride all day on Sunday. This is a significant decision for the city of Paris, and it will be interesting to see how it affects the transportation industry.
Well, I guess we'll have to start walking everywhere now. I hope my high heels can handle it.
It's fascinating to see how technology is changing the way we move around cities. However, it's important to consider the safety of these scooters and the impact they have on the environment.
Maybe we should start building electric scooters that can fly. I'll get right on that.
In all seriousness, safety concerns surrounding these scooters are valid. We need to ensure that these companies are held accountable for any accidents that occur.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm just glad I don't have to worry about my hair anymore.
It's not just about the safety of the riders, but also the pedestrians. These scooters can be a hazard if not used responsibly.
I think we should all just ride around in slick cars. Problem solved.
While that may be a solution for some, we need to consider the accessibility and affordability of transportation for all individuals. This decision by Paris may have a significant impact on the industry, and it will be interesting to see how other cities respond.
Well, from banning e-scooters to threatening to destroy Russians, it seems like Paris and Ukraine are taking very different approaches to their transportation issues.
Breaking news. President Zelenskyy has issued a warning to Russian troops occupying Ukraine. In this article from Uninformed News Agency, he stated that if they do not leave, they will be destroyed.
Well, it seems like President Zelenskyy is not playing around. He is ready to liberate Ukraine from Russian occupation. I guess you could say he's putting me back in Ukraine.
It's a classic game of chess, isn't it? The Russians make a move, and now President Zelenskyy is making his countermove. Let's hope he doesn't get checkmated.
I wonder if the Russians will take this warning seriously. Maybe they'll think it's just a Tislanov and ignore it.
It's heartbreaking to hear about the innocent civilians who were held hostage by the Russian invaders. President Zelenskyy's visit to the school basement, where they were held, is a powerful statement.
It's good to see that other world leaders are standing with Ukraine. German Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck and German ambassador to Ukraine Anka Feldhusen's visit with President Zelenskyy shows solidarity in the face of aggression.
President Zelenskyy's statement is a bold move, but it's important to remember that the situation in Ukraine is complex. It's not just about Russian troops leaving, but also about finding a path to peace and stability.
I'm curious to see how the Ukrainian armed forces will prepare for this counteroffensive. Maybe they'll take a page out of SpaceX's book and launch a surprise attack from space.
President Zelensky's comment about the Russian president spending the rest of his life in a basement is a strong statement. It shows the emotional toll that this conflict has taken on the Ukrainian people.
And now for something completely different. In other news, it seems like some people just can't take a hint when it comes to leaving unwanted situations.
Good evening, everyone. We have some breaking news tonight. A judge has found that Ontario Provincial Police Constable Jason Redden sexually assaulted an unconscious woman while recording on his mobile phone.
Well, that's just disgusting. What kind of person does something like that?
Unfortunately, this kind of behavior is not uncommon. Sexual assault is a serious problem that affects millions of people around the world.
And it's not just a problem in Canada. It's a problem everywhere. We need to do more to prevent and hold perpetrators accountable.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that sexual assault is never the victim's fault. No one deserves to be treated that way.
Well, I for one am glad that justice was served in this case. It's important that we send a message that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated.
Yes. And it's also important to remember that sexual assault is not just a crime against the victim. It's a crime against society as a whole.
Well said, Albert. And let's not forget that sexual assault can happen to anyone, regardless of their gender, race, or social status.
That's right, Katie. And in this article from Tech, we see that the victim's identity and some of the circumstances surrounding the sexual assault are protected by a publication ban. It's important that we respect the victim's privacy and dignity.
Absolutely, Derek. And let's hope that this case serves as a wake-up call to all of us to do more to prevent sexual assault and support survivors.
Well, it looks like we're moving from one story about bad behavior to another. From one officer who couldn't keep his hands to himself, to a whole army that can't seem to keep their wits about them.
Well, looks like the Russian army is having some trouble. Maybe they should take a page out of our book and focus on diplomacy instead of violence.
Breaking news. The Ministry of Defense has reported that alcohol abuse, violence, and weapon incompetence are killing Russian soldiers in Ukraine.
It seems the Russian army is not as invincible as they thought. Maybe they should have spent more time studying physics and less time training vodka.
I guess the Russian army needs to work on their rocket science skills. They're not exactly shooting for the stars with these casualties.
In this article from Yahoo, it's clear that the Russian army is facing some serious issues. It's important to remember that war is never the answer.
It's heartbreaking to hear about the casualties in Ukraine. We need focus on finding a peaceful solution to this conflict.
It's clear that the Russian army needs to address these issues if they want to be successful in their campaign. Poor weapon handling and alcohol abuse are not a recipe for victory.
It's important to remember that these casualties are not just numbers, they represent real people with families and loved ones. We need to do everything we can to prevent further loss of life.
As leaders, it's our responsibility to work towards a peaceful resolution to this conflict. We cannot stand by and watch as more lives are lost.